All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members and dear friends. It is my absolute honor to welcome you today with this first joint event with Civil Society Portugal, focusing on the theme of after Troika perspectives from Portugal and Greece. I'm Viola Spiropoulou, the president of Civil Society Greece. I want to express my gratitude for this opportunity to join forces with Civil Society Portugal in organizing this insightful joint webinar. This collaboration not only reinforces the already robust ties between our societies, but also advances our shared objective of delivering top-notch value to our members and cultivating, of course, market integrity. I extend my heartfelt thanks to President Marcos Soares Ribeiro of Civil Society Portugal for spearheading this initiative to discuss the economic landscapes of Portugal and Greece. I would like to extend my gratitude to our distinguished speakers for today, Constantino, Head of Research at Banco Santander, Theodoros Stamatiou, Senior Economist at Eurobank, and our moderator, Loizos Petrides. Their profound insights and valuable contributions promise an enlightening panel discussion. As charter holders, we embrace a common mission to lead the investment profession by upholding the highest standards of ethics, education, and professional excellence for the ultimate benefit of society. This webinar presents a unique opportunity to learn lessons from history and draw meaningful conclusions about the recovery phases of both Greek and Portuguese economies. I'm confident that today's session will be engaging and informative as we delve into the progress of these economies after the European debt crisis. Both countries encounter similar economic challenges, including fiscal deficits and high public debt, seeking financial assistance from the Troika, the IMF, ECB, and European Commission through bailout programs and severe austerity measures. Despite these challenges, both nations have made significant efforts toward recovery, experiencing a robust economic rebound in recent years. Greece has been slower than Portugal, of course, but they have successfully attracted both foreign investments, with tourism playing a significant role in their GDP, and through, of course, grappling with persistent high youth unemployment rates. I leave, of course, the in-depth exploration of these topics and more to our expert speakers. My sincere thanks also to Pedro Barata, the Executive Director of Civil Society Portugal, and Eleni Philos, Managing Director of Civil Society Greece, for their roles in bringing this webinar to fruition. I'm eagerly anticipating an exciting panel discussion, insightful presentations, offering all of us a valuable opportunity to learn from the expertise of our esteemed speakers. And I would like to introduce Dr. Theodoros Stamatiou, the participant from Greece. And Theodoros Stamatiou is currently a senior economist in Eurobank and the Division of Economic Analysis and Financial Market Research. And he had held a previous role as academic appointment in the research fellow in the Department of Banking Financial Management in the University of Piraeus, and also he was in the Ministry of Finance and Hellenic Republic as a member of the Council of Economic Advisors. He's also a member and ambassador for Greece and working group for the Euro risk-free rates and the European Commission, with the task of identifying and recommending alternative risk-free rates from January 2018 to present. In closing, I would like to forward a thought-provoking discussion, and looking forward to this and for more collaborating events with civil society Portugal in the future. Thank you from my side, and I will hand over to Marcos, the President of Civil Society Portugal, for his introduction.
Violeta, thank you very much for this introduction. Let me reaffirm it's a sheer pleasure to be co-organizing this event with the Greek CFA Society, and I think it was very insightful the idea to discuss this topic at this moment. I think it will be really relevant. Let me with no further ado just introduce our two other speakers and moderator today. Rui Constantino is the chief economist of Santander. He heads the research department, financial analysis, and he's also the investor relations of our bank here in Portugal. Rui is always a voice, always heard by international organizations when they come and want to learn about what's happening in Portugal in economic terms. So he's a very well-regarded voice here, and he has an extensive career and as an economist and within the bank. Loizos, and let me thank Rui very much to join this, to be with us today and share your insights. Loizos, thank you very much for joining our panel today. Loizos is a Greek national. But he's with us here in Portugal. He's a member of our society here in Portugal, a CFA charter holder himself. He's currently is a professor in a very distinguished university here in Portugal, ISCTE, and where he does research in several areas. Let me highlight about apart from the valuation that you also look at the art market, which is always quite interesting. I think we should do another event on this topic. And yourself, you have a certificate of International Art Market Association, which is quite interesting. And of course, you have a banking experience and investment banking experience, corporate banking experience in the past here in Portugal and in Greece. So I think we have here excellent speakers today with us today, and I really look forward to this session and especially, as Violeta was saying, looking at the past, learning from the past, and looking at the future and what's ahead of us. Thank you very much, and with no further ado, I will hand over to Rui.
Okay, thank you, Marcos. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you and in order to try to explain what has been done. I think that in all programs, the merit is all of the private sector who have to take the pains from misaction and then what is the required adjustment. Let me share with you a brief presentation with the main highlights. I'm sorry, but not been this one. If you are seeing it, please let me know. And let me hide this one, which is not relevant. Are you able to see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So starting our difficulty started a bit before the early 2000s. A part of the problem has to do with what is our own version of the Dutch disease following joining the EU and having access to the structural funds. It was positive in the very first years. It led to very strong growth and convergence, but then it was just more money aiding and going into domestic demand. Here I'm just looking at the imbalance and the first decade of the 2000s. So that's when the first set of problems started. In 2000, we still had, with the joining the euro, if you want, very strong growth, but then growth just disappeared, and over the next 10 years, we had an average growth rate of 1%. And with that, with very low productivity growth. At the same time, we had this low growth gradually became a problem in terms of unemployment. We started from full employment with a rate of 3.9%, and it gradually went up to almost 8% by the end of the decade, and then 11% in 2010. And with this, we always had run a fiscal deficit, which widened during the 2000s, and that led to a massive increase in public debt. And with that, I highlight that it's not here on the chart. In 2002, given the political standstill that we were reaching, we had an early election, a new government came to power, the socialists lost the elections and the social democrats came to power. They asked the Bank of Portugal, to evaluate what was the fiscal deficit and adjustments which took place. And then the social democrats were out in 2005, and we had a new election where the socialists came to power. Again, they asked the Bank of Portugal to conduct an audit on fiscal accounts. Again, the deficit was much wider than expected. During this period, 3-year period, we had a sort of adjustment program. Then we had a good period in which we had a reduction on the deficit, and then with the great financial crisis, we started to have significant difficulties, and in 2010, the deficit went to 11%. So, in short, misallocation of funds, wrong growth policies, focus on domestic demand, and with that, we had this build-up of imbalances, both at the fiscal deficit level, and also with a significant increase in that levels by the private sector, which private demand, while GDP was not growing much, private demand was growing very strongly. Let me see, you are not, I'm sorry. You are seeing the presentation because, which slide? Because
yes, I'm seeing, thank you.
Okay, sorry, because I have another screen and I'm just looking at the title page, and at this moment I could be leading you wrongly. At the same time, we build up the twin deficits with a very strong external imbalance within the context of the monetary union. At some point in time, some people with responsibilities in at the Bank of Portugal said that within a monetary union, external deficits were no longer a concern, but that led to a massive buildup of imbalances. And ultimately, we had the external sector financing the very strong growth of the domestic sector, and then we reached a 10% imbalance. With all these, and I mentioned, we had a very subdued export growth. Exports, the economy was open, but not that much. Total exports of goods and services represented less than 30% of GDP, and exports almost 40%. And that the difference, the trade balance, was basically then the difference of the current account and the widening of imbalances. We did see some improvement in terms of market share abroad, but very, very slightly, and then it was a domestic-led problem. At the same time, the economy, I mentioned total leverage, but you can see in the banking sector the massive growth on loans and deposits, and the widening of the gap between loans and deposits. So by 2010, loan to deposits ratio was around 150% for the system as a whole. At the same time, no major problems in terms of asset quality, with very low NPL ratios. This was 90-day overdue, the Bank of Portugal definition, and capital at around 8% common equity, which was required. Okay, so this is the situation and the significant buildup of imbalances. Then, with the great financial crisis, we had the banking sector crisis, and ultimately.
Tô. Zé.
Hello? Okay. So we had this situation. Greece by 2010 requested its financial assistance program. Portugal tried to implement some measures. I will not go into details, but basically the government said that they implemented a few. They froze wages in the civil service and they cut higher pensions, but at the same time they continued to execute the very same policy. So in April 2011, the government was forced to ask for the program. The program addressed three, like any other program, three main targets. One was to ensure fiscal consolidation, where we have the bulk of the measures. This is not exhaustive, but are mostly the most important ones that were executed. As you can see, there is a check mark on every single one of them. And basically, we had the suspension of pension indexation and the freeze in pensions in nominal and in real terms. Higher pensions were cut by up to 10% for pensions above 5,000 euros. Staff admissions were frozen, wages were frozen, and promotions were frozen. There was some changes in terms of income taxes, with either increases, especially at the level of personal income tax, and also a significant reduction in terms of deductions and benefits. In terms of VAT, another increase, and also tried to reduce the number of goods and services which were not taxed at the normal rate. Increase in taxes on consumption. We had a privatization program. This is basically what we had to privatize and was already residual up to 1/3 stakes in some companies. ANA was totally privatized. TAP was totally privatized already in late 2015. The freight operator CP Carga, TAP is the air company, ANA is the airport operator, Galp, the energy company, where the government already had a 30% stake. The same with EDP, which was the electric utility, REN, which was the electric grid, and the post office, and then the insurance companies within the state-owned bank Caixa Geral de Depósitos. So this was all executed, and a significant reduction of the general government, a reduction of local administration, but only at the level of parishes. It was not possible to reduce the number of municipalities. That was very difficult to achieve. And these measures also were applied in the autonomous regions in Portugal. So, and then looking into healthcare and the reduction of costs. So there was a significant and broad-based consolidation program at the fiscal level, which was largely executed. The situation was not the same in terms of what were some of the required structural reforms and looking into competitiveness. Some were implemented, a reduction of the severance payments, and there was a cap at the same time. That is, people could not be more than 18 months on the unemployment benefit, and following the 12 months it would start to decline, to force people to go back into the labor market. Individual dismissals the procedure was simplified. In Portugal, it's not that difficult to implement a collective dismissal, but at an individual dismissal is quite difficult. And then again, some measures to try to regulate, to reduce the number of regulated professions. We're talking about lawyers and other regulated activities, but that was not done. And one of the most significant measures, I think I've left it out, was no, it's on the top right box, which was try to implement an internal devaluation by increasing the labor contributions to social security by individuals and reduce it to companies. That was not possible to do. And this was much more difficult to implement. So at the fiscal front, we did a lot. On the rest of the economy, we did something which was important, and these measures were not reversed when we had the 2015 election and then when the new government came into power. Looking into how things have evolved, we can see that we had still the adjustment, a very strong contraction of GDP, and then after 2015, when the conditions started to improve, we did see an improvement in overall growth, and between 2015 and 19, on average, GDP growth was 2.6. We are on the conservative side in terms of potential GDP. We think that it is around 1.6%, and then we have the pandemic and post-pandemic period, with which we can go more into detail. The measures allowed for this fast post-adjustment recovery, and then allowed also the economy to react to the pandemic and the subsequent shocks. At the same time, unemployment reached a peak on average of 17% in 2013. Never had we had such a high unemployment rate. It was 18.3% in the second quarter of 2013, if I'm not mistaken, and then it started to decline once the economy started to recover. So the adjustment period had significant costs. Also, we did see that even during the adjustment period, the fiscal deficit was still elevated at around 6%. Only afterwards we started to see a clear improvement in terms of fiscal accounts. Public debt went up to almost 120% of GDP, and then to 130%. At the same time, the general government perimeter was revised, and basically we had a significant amount of public entities outside the general government perimeter which entered, and only recently did we see the decline of public debt, also taking advantage of the very strong nominal growth. This period of 2016 to 2019, it's not reflected here, but Portugal managed to reach a primary surplus. Basically, if you want, all the measures that were executed during the adjustment period in terms of increasing direct taxation has been maintained, and afterwards the new government, the socialist government, started to look into indirect taxation, and namely taxes on consumption and other special taxes. So the tax burden remains very high. Debt started to decline. There was a significant focus by the Troika also on the banking sector. Perhaps it is better seen on this chart. I will go back to the other. You can see that with the adjustment period, loans declined significantly. After 2014, we had additional issues. Banking sector problems only started in 2014. We had a resolution of one of the largest banks, Banco Espírito Santo, and in 2015, Banif, which was a smaller bank. And by then, we reversed the situation where the loan-to-deposits ratio turned below 100%. But we had this significant deleveraging of the banking sector. I'll go back into this. This is that trend, and we have been this deleveraging, which has been very important to assist also the pandemic adjustment and post-pandemic recovery, the significant decline, and also in the new context of high interest rates. The external balance was corrected. Back in 2010, basically what happened is that external investors started financing the economy, and then the problem became just a domestic problem. The government ran a massive deficit. The private sector had to run a massive surplus to correct the imbalance, and since then, we have had this improvement of external accounts. The significant reduction of domestic demand, which existed during most of the early 2000s, forced companies to go abroad. I recall that when the adjustment program started, the Troika said, it's going to be very difficult for Portugal because companies are very small, they are not export-oriented, they are price takers, they have no competitiveness in external markets. And in 4 years, exports, of course, GDP declined, but exports went up to 40% of GDP. And companies started looking abroad and they have maintained that focus. At the same time, tourism also started to rebound, and that assisted significantly this transformation. That is an important transformation of the economy. Finally, the banking sector, with all its problems, I have too many lines here, but you can see the bottom line is NPLs 90-day overdue, which was the Bank of Portugal's definition. Then we started to compute the credit at risk, where we did not only look at 90-day overdues, but start to look at the entire exposure that banks had to defaulting customers. And then only in 2015, we moved to the EBA NPL ratio. And then you can see the significant increase, and we started at 17.5% in 2015, and then to bring it down gradually with recapitalization of the system. The financial system was mostly affected post 2014. So within this adjustment, just going back, significant correction of external imbalances, strong growth, unemployment at the level or below the natural unemployment rate, exports rising to 50% of GDP, gains in market share in terms of goods in the external markets, with still strong growth that we had in overall global trade flows. And this has resulted in a transformation of the economy, which has been recognized by rating agencies. Rating agencies are fast to review downwards the ratings, as they did in 2010 and 2011, when Portugal came from the current levels or AA levels to BB levels in terms of rating, with significant impacts on the economy. But they were very resistant to improve the ratings. But in 2014, investors started to see the impacts of the transformation, and we had the first return to the market with an issuance of a 10-year bond, where demand was 3.5 times the offer, and the placement on 750 million. This was the first issue in more than 4 years, and it was very important to regain market access and gradually assist on the recovery. On the right-hand side charts, you can see the spreads which we had. At some point in time, we had 1,600 basis points spread to the bond, which never existed. There was no transaction at that time, but there has been this significant transformation, and the economy has moved. We will discuss this in the panel, so I will conclude very, very briefly and leave the conclusions then to the panel discussion, just saying what were the key factors for success. In 2011, people understood the gravity of the situation, because we were at the risk of not having money to pay wages in the civil service nor pensions. It was the only adjustment program where money was sent to Portugal in advance of negotiating and signing the memorandum with the Troika. By late April 2011, Portugal had received 28 billion euros to cover the liquidity shortness that they had. At the same time, we had an election, and in June, we had a majority of a social democrat government and a right-wing government that took political ownership of the program, and that was very important. The government was committed to execute the program. At the same time, the Troika was looking at Greece. We are starting to have Spain in the limelight, and it was necessary to have also a good performing case executing. And so this led to the situation. And finally, we had the benefit of the program ending at the time that the global economy was recovering, and so we took advantage of that, and we had this very strong period. I will stop here, and we'll discuss forward in the panel. Thank you.
Theodoro, can you go, please?
Oh, thank you. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Theodoros Stamatiou. I'm the senior economist from Eurobank Research in Athens. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm honored to be here today to participate in the event that is co-organized by CFA Portugal and CFA Greece. We will talk about the Greek programs, the Greek experience of the programs, what caused the crisis, and what happened afterwards. A personal note, I started working here in Eurobank in the 1st of October of 2009, and I'm following the Greek economy since. And so I lived the Greek the Greek crisis both as a person living in Greece during this period and as a professional following the crisis. I started on the 1st of October. The official start of the Greek crisis is the 6th of October. So it's my professional experience of the Greek crisis coincide. Well, let me start. Let me share my screen. Okay, here we are. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, then, thank you. Well, this is just before I start a brief introduction. Greece entered the euro at the end of 2001, and the whole process of for entering the euro started in the mid-90s. In 1996, have in mind that Greece was an economy with an average inflation of circa 25% in the 22% in the 80s, and an average inflation of 16, if I remember well, in the 90s. And it was lower just because of the process of entering the euro that started in 1996. And Greece managed to enter the economy, the euro, but afterwards there was a relaxation in the public sphere and in the public economics, and this gradually led to what later became known as the Greek sovereign debt crisis. In the first graph here, you can see that there was a chronic discrepancy between revenues and expenditures. Expenditures were greater, systematically greater than revenues for most of the period under question, for all the period before 2009. Greece, the last, have in mind that the last year with positive growth was 2007. 2008 was circa zero growth, a little bit of, it was something like 0.3 or something like that. And from then onwards, we had a recession that led to real GDP declined by 27% between the end of 2008 and the end of 2016, to 25 percentage points. So, sorry, not 27 percentage points. So the revenue, the difference between the expenditure and the revenue was a chronic problem. You can see here that around elections, for example, in 2009, revenues tend to lower and the expenditures to increase. And this was a systematic problem in the Greek economy. Moreover, the Greek economy was evident. You can see here a report from an article written in 2009, a graph from an article written in 2009, and you can see that at that time the gray economy was somewhere at close to 25% of was estimated at close to 25% of GDP. You can see in the right hand side the VAT gap, which is the difference between the VAT realization and the expected VAT revenue. Back in 2008, Greece was second to it was second to the top. The VAT gap was at 28%, with Lithuania at 34%. This gap remained. Oh, there's a zero here. Well, this gap remained almost constant until, believe it or not, 2017. And from 2017 onwards, there is a process of there were measures taken in order to reduce this gap, which stand at almost 18% in 2021, and it is estimated that circa 10% in 2022. But well, it's well away from the Eurozone average for the Euro area, European Union average, which is at which was at 5.3% in 2021. Well, and for in Eurobank, we published a report a couple of 1 month ago, if I remember well, 1 or 2 months ago, that we estimated that the problem with the shadow economy remains, and we estimated that it is something where our estimate for its current measure is something like 40 billion. Which is not very different from the one you see in the graph. Here you can see the twin deficits before that were commonplace before the crisis. You can see here that in 2007, 2008, 2009, and even if you go before that, we had both a deficit in the fiscal balance and a deficit in the current account balance. As you already know, as you probably already know, this is a sign of bad things to come. And but at that time, no one was interested in this, and they view it as something usual. As Rui mentioned before, we were in a currency union, so such things do not matter. That was a common belief before 2009. In order to put the deficits into perspective, you can see at the end left here, the left end here, Greece, Portugal is here, and Cyprus is here. All three countries entered in an adjustment program. This is the average general government fiscal balance for 2001-2008, and this is the average current account balance for 2001-2008. So this is Greece here, Portugal here, and this is the average fiscal balance for the said period 2001-2008, and this is the average nominal GDP growth. This is also confirms what Rui said before about Portugal. So we have negative current account and low growth rate. The average growth rate is here, and for Greece it was something better, but there is no beware that correlation that does not imply causation. So this is not to say that the current account balance was good because it created more growth for Greece. It might go the other way around, and it sure goes the other way around. Greece was an economy based mainly on consumption, so more consumption increased the current account balance. So these were the let me okay. These were the fiscal problems that led to, we have something more that we will mention in a couple of slides, but this was the fiscal picture that led to the crisis, the fiscal and the current account picture that led to the crisis. Again, we have the other side. The other side is the low competitiveness of the Greek economy. We can see here, I'm using the economic complexity index produced constructed by the Harvard University. You can see here that the economic complexity of the exports of its well, you can see in the graph on the left-hand side the economic complexity index for this is again the average 2008. Yep. This is a mistake. It's 2001 to yep. 2001, 2021, this is not an average, sorry, my mistake. And you can see that according to the economic complexity index, the ranking for Greece was at the 52 position, while for Portugal was 33, and this is the 23 here is the Eurozone average. The lower, the better. Sorry, there is a mistake here. It's lower. This is, sorry, I'm a little bit confused, but there's a mistake here. Is the opposite. It's not higher value, it's lower value is better. So one is the okay. So we can see here that the Greek exports were mainly concentrated in low complexity products. Such products are mainly minerals and agriculture. There is low sophistication of production, and this is a problem that still remains with us. So even after all these years of the adjustment process and the implementation of reforms, the economic complexity index remains almost unchanged. So this is still a problem for Greece. Here I have the real effective exchange rate. You can see that here Greece from 2002 to 2009, the real effective exchange rate was increasing. So this is a loss of competitiveness that we managed from 2011 onwards to we managed to improve in both real exchange effective rate indices. Now, Let me summarize. I show you the main fiscal picture, and I told you about the loss of the low competitiveness of the Greek exports. All these problems were known well before 2009. The critical question here is why why we entered the crisis in 2009 and not before or after. Well, there are four reasons for that. The first is the 2008 world crisis, which increased the risk aversion of foreign investors. Okay, and why this is critical? Because the Greek debt, I will tell you in a couple of bullets. Well, the second reason was the Greek statistics saga that started in early October 2009. Back then, Greek statistics was a common picture, a common title in the news. What happened? The then government decided to, because of the upcoming elections, stopped publishing data on the budget execution, and for almost a year, and just before the elections, the day of the election almost coincided with the EDP procedure of Eurostat EDP procedure. This is the process of declaring the fiscal balances each year that Eurostat uses for the member states to declare their fiscal balances every year. And the government, because it was, if I remember well, the election was on 4th of October 2009, and the end, it was a Sunday, and the deadline for the Eurostat was on Friday, 2 days before. The government decided not to submit the data in Eurostat. Eurostat got too angry with that, and it was the first time that a member state did not submit the data. And on Monday, Eurostat requested a review of the Greek data. This review started on 6th of October 2009. I told you before I told you before that this marked the start of the Greek crisis, and the first and we had reviews. You can see in the table here, we had the revisions of the almost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in total revisions of the Greek fiscal balance and the debt figures in 2010, and in the last one was in November 2011. This created a huge uncertainty for the in the market, in the sovereign investors, because it was like the Greek figures were like moving targets in the period. You can see here that the debt started, the 2009 debt started from 19.4% of GDP, and finally at the end, in almost after 1 year, less than 1 year, it was something like 126%, 27%. So this was a major problem, the moving target of the Greek fiscal forecasts. At the same time, we had the Dubai world default at the end of November 2009. This was a default of if I remember well, Dubai Gold had an A rating at the time, so it had a better rating than Greece. They didn't have problems with their statistics. So after the news on the Dubai Gold default became public, everyone focused on the next, who will be the next victim, the next one to fall, and the obvious suspect at the time was Greece. So we had a significant increase in Greek bond spreads and CDS spreads from November onwards, and we also have a succession of downgrades. Okay, and we have 3 out of the 4 reasons that led to the crisis during the period. The most important one was that Greece had at the time the financing needs were estimated at circa 91 billion between June 2010 and the end of 2013. So there was little space. Greece needed money at the time, and when all these, all the things with the news with the Greek statistics and etc. became public knowledge, the market started to close. Greece, if I remember well, managed to tap the market once more in early 2010 after the reaction of the Greek statistic scandal, and then the markets closed, and the markets closed from early 2010 to, if I remember well, early 2018. For almost 8 years, there was no new issues of Greek debt in the market, and the Greece asked for a program in April 2010. The program was approved in early May 2010. This was the first adjustment program. It's easy for Portugal to say because there was only one adjustment program. In Greece, unfortunately, we had 3 adjustment programs. The first one started from in May 2010 and ended unsuccessfully and ungloriously in November 2011. The second program started in February 2012 and ended with the famous first semester of 2015. And the third program started in August 2015 and ended in August 2018. The problems, what happened with I will just summarize what happened during each of the adjustment programs, and we will discuss it later on in the panel. Just to say here that the first adjustment program was what I'm saying here in the presentation is that it was a child of, it was no one's child. Greece needed the money because I told you before they had to refinance almost 19 billion of debt in almost 2 years and a half, and but at the same time, Greece asked for help from its Euro area partners. The Euro area partners did not have such an experience. Greece was the first country to enter in such a situation, and they asked the help of the IMF. The IMF is an institution built to provide such expertise, but at the same time, the Euro area Troika member states and the ECB did not want the IMF to be the head in such a program. So there was a big dispute who will in the first program, the Troika, even though we called it a Troika, there were big rivalries among them. And at the same time, there was little ownership by the Greek government of the reform agenda, for the implementation of the reform agenda. Just to give you a short picture, the Greece received circa 53 billion from the first program out of a financial envelope of 110 billion. And what happened during the first program? Greece, the fiscal balance and the primary balance improved significantly, but this improvement was mainly due to horizontal cuts in pensions, in expenditure. There was they didn't try to improve revenues. And to tell you, there was a lack in the implementation of the structural reforms required by the first program. The second program started in October 2012, in February 2012. It was built around the private sector involvement. This was a debt restructuring process that led to almost 48% reduction of the Greek public debt at the time. The second program did not have the problems I told you before, because at the time, the EFSF, the European Financial Stability Facility, was already in place and provided the financing. So it was led by the Euro area institution, a European Union institution, and which was built for that specific reason. And this was also the institution that provided the loan to Portugal and later on to Cyprus and Ireland. And to Cyprus and Ireland, and it was the predecessor of the European Stability Mechanism that was initiated in September 2012 and still exists. The program was based, the objectives, the main objectives of the second program was the continuation of the fiscal effort, the restructuring of the Greek debt, and again, the focus on the implementation of structural reforms. We received something like 131 billion out of a financial envelope of 165. At the start of the program, the coalition government, the then coalition government managed to implement a number of reforms, but again, the results in reform implementation were better compared to the first program, but again, reforms in areas like tax administrations, privatizations, and the labor market reforms lagged significantly behind schedule. During the last year, so in 2013 and 2014, there was a stabilization of economic growth. The The banking sector reforms were significant. These reforms included the recapitalization of the Greek banking sector. Have in mind here that the Greek banking sector was hurt mainly by the haircut of the Greek bonds. The Greek banks, their main assets were Greek bonds, so they had a major issue when the restructuring, the haircut of initiated by the PSI process took place, and afterwards, when as the crisis continued, they got the second blow was from the NPL side. Have in mind that during 2013, unemployment in Greece reached a level of 28%. It's not a mistake. It was 28%, 28.3 if I remember well. And the NPLs in the private, in the bank's NPLs reached something like 48% of their portfolio. The cumulative austerity measures and the uncertainty created in between programs in the period in 2011-2000% led to a further deepening of the recession. The coalition government did not manage to conclude the program at the end of 2014, and in addition, the Troika did not want to end the program at the end of 2014 because there was an election scheduled for January 2014, and the Troika did not want to give a carte blanche, did not want to conclude the program and give to the next government the free hand to reverse what have been achieved until then. We had a new government in January 2000, at the end of January of 2015. The new government was elected on the basis of the newly on an anti-austerity platform. They tried to renegotiate the program, and they tried to achieve a new haircut. They failed in all these endeavors, and at the same time they caused a silent bank run in the Greek economy. The Greek banking system was financed via the ECB's emergency liquidity assistance mechanism facility, and when the ECB decided to put an end on this, decided to freeze the ELA funding at the end of June 2015, the Greek government imposed capital controls, which more or less stayed until the September 2019, even though relaxed from 2018 onwards. But it was the first such action, another first for Greece in Eurozone, a Eurozone member imposing capital controls. And there was if you remember back at the time, there was a vote in Greece in order for the people to decide whether to agree or not on the program proposed by the Troika. Finally, after they decided in August 2018, the then coalition government, the government that was elected in January 2015, decided to turn around, and they signed the third economic adjustment program. the third economic agenda, and they not only decided to sign it, but they implemented the third economic adjustment program with the help of the Troika. If you okay, some insiders say that they didn't implement, they didn't have the ownership, that the Troika implemented the program, held by 2 or 3 persons from that government. But okay, let's not go into Greek politics. The thing is that the third program succeeded in stabilizing the Greek economy. The Greek economy started from 2017 to achieve, to return to positive growth rates, but to small, they were just above zero for 2 years. So they were something like 0.2 or 0.5% growth rates, and but the significant improvement came from 2019 onwards. But the government, the implementation of the third program managed to achieve this, the return to positive growth rates. However, the social cost was significant, and again, challenges remain in terms of debt sustainability, banking sector health, the private, the NPLs I told you before remain in levels above 40%, and again there was they succeeded in implementing a number of reforms in the labor markets and in the pension markets. But again, the first thing I showed you, the graph on with the revenues and the expenditures, there was no effort to tackle tax evasion and improve the revenues. There were no reforms implemented on the fiscal, on the revenue side, on the general government revenue. Moreover, I told you before that the Greek government returned to modest growth, but the Greek government lost the 2015-2018 growth window. I remind you that this was the period with the lowest interest rates in history, and Greece during that period was discussing Brexit, and afterwards we were achieving growth rates around zero. So this was a main main drawback. This was a disappointment for that government and from that government in the said period. As an example, to show you why that window I told you before was important, in this graph, the black line here is the real GDP growth from 2007 to 2028. Okay, these here are forecasts, but the dotted red line here until the end of 2022 are realizations. These are not forecasts, are realizations, and the forecasts start from 2023 onwards. Okay, so this is the dotted line for 2015, 2018 are realizations. I used the Monte Carlo simulation to generate possible future outcomes for Greece GDP from the end of 2014 onwards, using the historical data, under the assumption that a crisis similar to the one observed between 2009 and 2011 will not occur again in the near future. And if you can see here, that the central forecast of my Monte Carlo simulation is significantly above the realization of GDP. This means that the historical data permitted a GDP growth path better than the one realized during that period. And thus we can attribute that the realization of GDP, which was lower than what the historical data simulation permitted, the realization of the GDP might be affected by other reasons. So I think that I'm comfortable here to say that
Theodoros,
I'm completing. This is my last sentence.
Okay, thank you.
What I have to say here is that I think that I can attribute this difference between the realization and the simulated GDP to the environment of the first semester of 2015. And I will not continue. I will use the rest of the presentation for the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Theodoros, for your presentation. Thank you very much, Rui, for your presentation. You have given us lots of information to think about and debate. Actually, I would like to make a comment. Let's say a sort of summary. Both in the case of Portugal and in the case of Greece, both of you explained that we had an accumulation of problems. Rui talked about imbalances, about slow growth, deficits. Theodoros talked about chronic problems. We had expenditures always higher than revenues. We had, in the case of Greece, and still have, a significant part of the economy belongs to the shadow economy, so we are losing tax revenue. Rui referred to a series of wrong growth policies during at least 20 years. So we can say that in both of these cases, the intervention of the Troika, it was kind of an accident waiting to happen. In the case of Greece, we had the Greek statistics that really pushed, let's say, the country over the edge. Rui informed us that essentially Portugal ran out of money, so they had to ask someone, well, the European partners. There's something that both of you mentioned in your presentations, and it has to do with the necessary political consensus in both countries to implement one program in Portugal or 3 programs in the case of Greece, and the importance of the politicians in power to assume the ownership of the program. Could both of you provide a brief comment and your opinion whether these were deciding factors for Portugal, for example, to conclude the program in 3 years, and for Greece to need 3 programs in 8 years, even though some of these elements became evident from Theodoros, who walked us through the 3 programs. Rui, would you like to go first?
Yes, I can go first. I think that political ownership was very, very important. Because I recall the discussions with the IMF team, and Albert always told us the program is yours. That is, when we were discussing the measures and saying some of these don't make any sense and will make only things worse, and he was saying the program is yours. So basically you present the measures. Of course, you are in an emergency situation and it's very difficult to think of alternatives from the usual that the government has, which is taxes more and more and more. But the political, even if the Social Democrats had been in power in the past, they were in 2002, and they had the opportunity to execute some of the reforms, and they didn't, and they have a majority in parliament. The leadership that came in 2011 was more liberal in the European sense, not in the US sense, in terms of what could be necessary to execute. And that was very important. Secondly, so this was one thing. The government was committed to transform the economy and take the opportunity to execute reforms that were necessary. And I mentioned that we had basically one decade and a half of wrong policies and wrong growth strategies, basically focused on domestic demand. So this was important. And ultimately, the government changed because the prime minister was at some point he looked insensitive to what people were saying, because in the campaign for the 2015 election, it was saying we still need to cut pensions going forward. I'm just doing things because the lights are going out, and this was in. So he lost the elections not only because of that, for other reasons, but he lost the majority. Secondly, I think that the overall role of institutions, even with the trade unions and the meetings with the different parties, the message that was passed, and we had several programs ongoing at some point in time, and they say, let's say, when we visit the trade unions, they are not wearing overalls or whatever. They present themselves in a suit and tie. And it was a shock. It was a shock for them. For us, it is not. For those in Portugal who watch the news and see how even the Communist Party used to dress until ties were a thing that has gone, you would see. And the demonstrations, because the Communist Party is also very institutional, and they control the trade unions, the demonstrations were always very much organized. What this means, people were not happy, but the government was committed to deliver something. And secondly, at the institutional level, everyone played their role, but understood that the situation had to be controlled so that we would have this, and this was important. If you go nowadays, you are in Portugal and you see what is going to be the campaign, is that the adjustment program was executed because the Social Democrats wanted to punish people because they are bad and whatever, and not because the economy came to the situation that there was no money. And when we're out of money, you know what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Theodore, could we have your take on the importance of political consensus in terms of implementing the programs, and a brief comment on the ownership of the program?
Sure. Well, the political consensus was absent in the Greek case, and that's why it took us almost 8 years, more than 8 years, almost 9 years, 8 years and a half to exit the three programs. The government that went to elections before in 2009 lost. I told you about the Greek statistics thing in October 2009. The government decided they tried. It was a right-wing government, and they knew that they had the elections in front of them when the crisis of 2008 erupted, and they tried to use funding from the markets in order to boost the economy, and they increased the public debt. If I remember well, we were something like the average. We were tapping the market for 8 billion per month in 2008 and 2009, or if I remember well the figure. So they tried to, and then when they saw that everything is that there was no result, they went to snap elections. They lost, and the new government, even though they knew that the things are the things that they will be very difficult. And even though they were the first ones to call unofficially the IMF to come and provide the advice, at the end they were politicians, and they didn't want to take the political costs. They acted like usual politicians. They didn't want to take the political cost, and even some of them inside the government, within the government, they used the crisis as a mechanism to attract more votes or to help their political career afterwards. So the political consensus during the first program was absent. Ownership of the program was also absent. That's why they went to increase taxes, as Rui said before. That was the common cookbook of the IMF at the time. And but there was no implementation of structural reforms in the first program. In the second program, this improved, but the crisis led to the liquidation of the political parties of the socialists and the right wings, and the new populist party came in power, and that finally won the elections in 2015. And the funny thing is that the ownership of the third program, during the third program, the populist party took the ownership of the program. Also, or as I told you before, some here in Greece say that the Troika took the ownership and implemented the third program with the help of some of the ministers of that party, and they managed to finish the program successfully. Even though they had poor growth results, they managed to implement most of the reforms. Again, the tax reform remained outside of. They did not implement it, and then again a right-wing center right-wing government came to power in 2019 and started to implement the reforms that all the other parties did not touch in the previous 10 years. And just to have a clear picture, probably you are Greek, so you know what happens in Greece nowadays. The government that was elected for a second time before a couple of months now initiates a reform of the tax of the VAT system and of the tax of the income tax system. This is one of the major reforms implemented from 1999.
Okay.
So we are here right now.
Okay. Thank you very much for this last point. It means that Greece is continuing with reforms. And I would like to ask Rui, and then I will give the floor back to Theodoros. Since our event is called After Troika, and in both cases, the Troika recipes had fiscal consolidation measures and structural reforms. Rui, what are, let's say, the three major reforms that Portugal needs to implement in, let's say, in the medium term? Things that, let's say, the Troika recommended, but were not concluded or were not even implemented because of various political reasons or other reasons.
Okay, well, several reforms were not made. One, a deeper reform of the judiciary system, which was one of the targets. They've eliminated the court backlog, but you didn't have really a reform, in the sense that the procedures remain very heavy in bureaucratic terms. Access to justice is still limited for the overall population. That is, you can go to court, but it has some costs, and especially it has significant costs in terms of timing, because you don't, you don't know when the decision is coming, and you don't know what decision is coming. For instance, Portugal, like the rest of continental Europe, has a system, not a system of common law or jurisprudence like the Anglo-Saxon countries, which means that depending on which court or which judge takes the measure, you could have one decision or another. The second has to do with very lengthy processes. For instance, our former Prime Minister, José Sócrates, was accused of corruption back in almost 10 years ago, 9 years ago, and we still haven't gone into the court trial case, to give you an idea where politicians are involved. And that is a key concern. The discussions were, when attracting foreign direct investment, the judiciary is also important, because people want to know, if I have to go to litigation, how long will it take? And that is out of the way. So the government did very little, and this socialist government, one thing is certain: despite the fact that they had a coalition with the far left parties, they did not reverse some of the most significant measures. They started doing something, but there were changes in severance payment, but the possibility to dismiss people and some of the reforms introduced in the labor market were maintained. The second is a review of the central government in order to reduce bureaucracy. That is out of the way still. If you want, within the national resilience and recovery plan, there is money allocated to the digitalization of the general government, which would lead to simplification of bureaucracy with one entry point. For instance, if you are a company and you want to invest, especially in manufacturing, you are going to need licenses and approvals by several public departments, and you have to go start and present the file to each one. The idea was to have a single point of entry. I would present my file, and then I would have a speedier process. That was in the later stages of the recovery plan, which is already very, very delayed. That would be important. Some other measures. I'm sorry, there was one measure which has not been reversed, but which has been frozen. It would be necessary, if you want. Within this simplification, also, that would ease some of the tensions which we are having in Portugal in terms of housing, where you don't have enough supply. Prices are going double digits, and it's very difficult to start all the procedures. I would leave with these two. Some would mention the recovery procedures for companies out of court, which are also lengthy. There are divergent interests. That has not been so much of a concern because insolvencies are very low, But once you have to go and you go to what is a special recovery program, when the company applies for that, it's already out of the market and it's going to take 10 years just to do what to do with the assets. So you need the judiciary, a bureaucracy, and finally to speed up out of court procedures for a company recovery.
Thank you very much, Rui. We have used our time, but I would like to give to each of you 2 minutes or 3 minutes for your concluding remarks. Hopefully, we will end the event on a positive note. I would like Theodoros to go first for his concluding remarks.
Thank you, and thank you for the wonderful for the organization of this event. First of all, well, just to conclude, in order to give color to what just Rui said, in order to have a decision by a court in Portugal, you need, according to the World Bank's 22 statistics, something like 755 days. Okay, how many days do you need in Greece? 1,000. It's 1,000 and 700. You almost need something like 1,7. Sorry. I'm just reading the figure here. You need something like 4.5 years in order to have a decision, a court decision in Greece. So it's even worse. All the reforms that Rui just mentioned for Portugal apply also in Greece. We have to continue implementing reforms in the judicial system, in the public sector. Digitization went well. It was helped also by the pandemic and the reforms during the pandemic. But we have to continue building on that, and we also need to reform our educational system, starting from the lowest level to the universities, and go upwards to the universities. And one last comment: we have the funds from the RRF available, and we have we have to continue implementing the conditionality, the structural reforms of the RRF. And in the longer term, we have to deal with the demographic issues. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Theodore. Rui, a couple of minutes for your concluding remarks. Hopefully, we'll end up on a positive note. Some optimism is needed.
Now, optimism is needed, and let's say, despite everything, and the very tough adjustment program which we have had, there were some success factors, and the fact that the economy has resumed growth, and even smaller companies were forced to look into external markets as an alternative to domestic demand, was very important, because that it's to competition, that it's to innovation, and that allows also in this difficult period, uncertain period with geopolitical issues. This means that these companies can still look abroad, try to grow and retain talent, which is a very important issue, especially when the demographic winter for Europe as a whole is coming, and we have had brain drain, and we need to hold that. But this is important, and the fact that if we, as a whole, the society is attentive and concerned, we will not lead to the buildup of imbalances, and we need to continue restructuring the economy. Structural reforms is a very large umbrella which takes a lot of things. We think of things that we are going to build a new economy. Sometimes we need to build up on what we are doing, and that shows that has its own profits and leads to sustainable growth, that leads to employment, that leads to income, that leads to distribution and the possibility to have a better society. If we do that, and rating agencies like Moody's did recently and the others recognize that, then we are on a right path. If we just think that we have done enough and that no further reforms are necessary, then we are going to gradually go into stagnation and into the buildup of imbalances again. Just a final word to congratulate you, to thank Theodoros also for his excellent presentation, and thank you for the opportunity to be with you again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have reached the end of our event with a 10-minute delay. This is what happens when you have interesting topics to discuss. I would like to thank our two speakers, Rui Constantino and Theodoros Stamatiou, for their wonderful job in providing us important insights regarding the Troika experiences in these two contexts, Greece and Portugal. I would also like to thank the leaders, the chairman and of the CFA Society Portugal and the chairwoman of the CFA Society Greece, Marcos Soares Ribeiro and Violeta Spiropoulou, for this excellent initiative. And of course, I would like also to highlight that this initiative came to fruition because of the hard work that the two executive directors of the societies, Eleni Philos from Greece and Pedro Barata from Portugal, worked so hard for this event to become a reality. And on a personal level, I feel very much honored to have been chosen for moderating this event. Last but not least, I would like to thank the audience, both in Greece and Portugal, for joining this event. And hopefully this will be the first, not the first and only event, but the first event that will give rise to further events next year, joint events between the Greek and the Portuguese CFA societies. And with that note, I would like to wish everybody a good evening, and hopefully I will see you soon, either online or in the real world. Thank you very much for joining us.